With the expression International Gothic, we indicate the late phase of Gothic art that goes from the last decades of the 14th century to the middle of the following century. The word international indicates on one hand that the style did not spread from a single center, but it is mostly a dialogue between the European courts, which unifies very different experiences. On the other hand, it underlines its diffusion throughout Europe in a homogeneous way, but also with significant regional variations. It is also called courtly Gothic because it spreads in the sophisticated environment of the court, giving life to the first medieval art form not linked to religious themes or patrons. Courtly, chivalrous, and religious themes are the most important ones. Atmospheres are idealized, and the narration takes on the connotation of a fairy tale. Regarding our religious themes, following the loss of authority by the Church with the Schism of the West, it changed the way of representing the saints and the Madonnas, who possess a greater humanity and delicacy. This happens in response to the search of a more intimate religiosity and a more direct relationship with God. To all this is added a formal elegance and a love for luxury and preciousness, especially in those cities where the richest impose the taste. In architecture, the late Gothic is defined as flamboyant, which is a term that highlights the sinuous lines of the buildings, where the shapes become similar to darting flames, and the structural complexes of ribs and flying buttresses more and more thin and accentuated. The masonry structures that are not load-bearing, as well as being replaced by windows, are filled with extremely sophisticated fretworks. On the roofs, in the vertices, and in the upper edges of the front walls, elaborate plumbs are introduced, making the height of the structures even more elevated. As far as sculpture is concerned, the late Gothic is more modest. The statues of the period take on sinuous postures that emphasize the shape of the figures, the rich drapery, and the elaborate research of details. The work of the Burgundian Claus Sluter exercised a decisive influence. His sculpture is characterized indeed by the monumental plasticity of the figures and the neo-realistic conception, as in the Well of Moses of 1395, the base of an imposing crucifixion realized for the Church of Champmont. In this period, the miniature, that is no longer used exclusively for the illustration of sacred texts, has a very important role. It was the Flemish brothers Limburg who created the most important late Gothic miniatures, as evidenced by the coronation of the Virgin, miniature containing in the manuscript the very rich hours of the Duke of Berry, made in 1412. The coronation of the Virgin is a blaze of blue and gold, contained in a triloba figure in which saints and blessed admire the Virgin, kneeling before Christ enthroned, who appears in a blessing gesture. The blue of the sky, the presence of gold, and the sinuous curves make the scene a precious and luminous arabesque. As a consequence of the extreme diffusion of miniatures, painting becomes the art that most of all shows the new late Gothic taste. The decorative use of the contour line is emphasized with gaudy flat backgrounds, and even more present are the gold backgrounds. Italy developed an independent tradition from the rest of Europe that was reiterated first of the Byzantine classical heritage, and then of the innovations introduced by Giotto and Cimabue, and of Simone Martini's painting, which had a great influence on the development of International Gothic. Among the major exponents of International Gothic in Italy, we find Gentile da Fabriano, born in Ancona, and Antonio Pisano. This last one, called Pisanello, was a painter and a medalist. He came from Pisa to Verona when he was still a child around 1395. We know very little of his education, since his first works have been totally lost, and it is estimated that only 5% of his artistic production is known to us. Pisanello worked for the Doge of Venice, for the Pope, for the courts of Verona, Ferrara, Mantova, Milano, Rimini, and in the last years in Naples, where he died around 1455. The painting of Pisanello can be defined as extremely educated, in the sense that every fresco or canvas he makes is preceded by refined preparatory drawings, in which every detail is studied with almost scientific attention. These usually animal-themed drawings are obtained from real life and seek meticulous realism. Only minor or fragmentary paintings remain of his frescoes, including the cycle on St. George of the Chapel Pellegrini in Santa Anastasia in Verona, realized between 1433 and 1438, of which today what is left is the scene representing St. George and the Princess, which is his most famous work. Here, it is possible to admire the language of his heart of a fairy tale and refined tone, coherent with the style of International Gothic, but which is evolving into a naturalism close to the conquests of the Tuscan Renaissance. The scene has for subject St. George in precious knightly clothes, that is about to climb on his white horse to go and defeat the legendary dragon. While the animals are the result of life studies, the late Gothic architectures that appear against an almost black sky lose any realistic intent and turn into a precious decorative fretwork. The search for the particular transfers the scene into an unreal and timeless dimension, and that is why even the gruesome presence of the two men hanging in the background seems to have lost all drama.